Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Jarrett Hubbard, and I am project manager for Link Rapid Transit. I'm glad you could join us tonight for a kind of a virtual review of the station model that we have currently built and stationed out at the intersection of Civic Center, 3rd Avenue, and 2nd Street, right across the street from the public library. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's out there at the model and what the model does show and what the model doesn't show. Try to give you kind of a little background behind the work that's been done on the model and for the station platforms that are accompanying Link Rapid Transit. I'll be joined tonight by Nick Lemmer, Communications Director with the Rochester Public Transit, and Nathan Johnson, architect with Formula Architects out of Minneapolis. You can go to the next slide, Alicia. As usual, we are open to take questions in a couple of different ways. First, if you have something pops in your brain and you just want to type it on out, you can open up the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen or on your panel and submit a question via text that way. We will try to take a stop somewhat back half of the presentation, and then at the end of the presentation to take questions live. If you're interested in asking us questions, all we ask is that you use the raise your hand feature, and then during those breaks, during those Q&A sessions, we will go through a process where we will elevate you to speak, and then you just have to unmute yourself after you've been elevated, and you can ask your questions live of the four of us. Actually, I shouldn't exclude Alicia, who is working the background. Next. So as I stated, we're primarily here to talk about the station model, but we're going to begin tonight with a brief project overview. Some of the basics again that many of you probably have heard over and over again as part of these webinar series, but we just always like to make sure that in case we do have anyone new, that we make sure that everyone hears the basics. Then we'll dive into the station model that is currently out on the street, and Nick will talk through some of the features that are part of that station, and then we'll kind of close with Nathan talking through how some of the stations will be adapted and modified for some of the stations that we have, or the locations of one of the 7 stops that we have along the line. One of the first things before we get too far into it, no, you can go to the next slide. Thank you, Alicia. Is that we're proud to announce as part of an event on September 13th at the model, when we opened up the model on Monday, September 13th, that the city has gone through a process and developed a name and logo and characteristics for downtown rapid transit. So instead of hearing me say Rochester Downtown Rapid Transit, it is now Link Rapid Transit. We hope that Link becomes your next way to get to downtown and connect to your destinations downtown, is the general direction of the name and the marketing that we're headed with Link. But with that being said, to move on, that is a big deal, and we're pretty proud of the Link name, but we still have 5 years until we open up service at 2025. So we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of time to get there. With that being said, here are some of the basics. Again, we're looking at a 2.6 mile route, mainly along 2nd Street, starting out at what is currently Mails West parking lot out there by Cascade Lake Park. That parking lot would be turned into what's known as a transit village that would include residential, commercial, retail, and parking all out there on that site. That would be the west edge of the route. You would then move eastward on 2nd Street through downtown until you reach the Civic Center and 3rd Avenue, make a right-hand turn on the 3rd, followed by a right-hand turn immediately on the 4th Street, a right-hand turn on the Broadway, and then back the left-hand turn back on the 2nd to head back out west. Service, you would arrive at one of these stations or platforms, and a bus would come every 5 minutes during the peak periods of the day, and every 10 to 15 minutes during the off peaks. Service would be extended beyond current RPT service. Right now, we're in discussions that it would be from 5 a.m. in the morning to midnight during the week, and roughly 8 a.m. in the morning and to 11 or midnight at the evening. Next slide. In general, Link Rapid Transit is going to provide comfortable shelters and lighting and heat. We'll have emergency systems in place, including cameras and lighting and emergency phones. Boarding will be fast and easy with level boarding and 3 doors. Be able to prepay before you get on board at our kiosk and information centers and displays. And then finally, Link Rapid Transit will use what's known as traffic signal priority, and that helps make sure that we can meet those 5-minute arrival times and make the trip as quickly as possible from one end to the other. Next slide. So in general, like I said, many of you probably heard me present on where this project comes from, but it starts off with several years of work coming up and really peaking with the DMC development plan in 2015. Really calling for that we expect to have a large increase in population and jobs, particularly downtown Rochester. And to help accommodate particularly all that population and new jobs, we need to find ways to get people out of their individual cars and then the other modes of transportation. And that gets us into what the mode shift and the graphic on the right. Essentially right now, roughly about 10% of people who do come downtown are coming on transit, and we'd like to get that number up to 30% through Link Rapid Transit. Beyond that, we're hoping to increase transportation options, reduce the amount of land and area in downtown that's consumed and utilized for parking and parking garages, alleviate congestion. If we have all that growth we wouldn't have all those people driving personal vehicles. It would be tough to get around downtown. And prepare for that growth, and then finally make sure that we can that the quality of life downtown for residents, employees, and our visitors that come is elevated without having to deal with too much traffic. Next slide. So Link Rapid Transit is primarily the creation of a mass transit system known as a bus rapid transit, or BRT for short, along 2nd Street, but includes as part of the project. The city will look to make several enhancements. One of those enhancements is a complete reconstruction of 2nd Street between 11th and 16th, with additional construction between 16th and 18th. And as part of that additional construction between 16th and 18th, you can see we'll have separated bike lanes that would separate the bike lanes from traffic on the bridge over US 52 to get you between 16th and 18th Avenues. And then the complete reconstruction piece would include additional new sidewalks and streetscape there in front of St. Mary's. Next slide. Included with one of those pieces, and I'll try to defer some of this to Nathan to talk about a little bit later on, but we will redesign and reconfigure the 2nd Street, 3rd Avenue, and Civic Center Drive intersection there next to the Civic Center and very near the Art Center. Primarily, those additions are to accommodate the current flow of traffic and to provide a better experience for pedestrians getting to and from Link Rapid Transit. Next slide. Importantly, it's important to note that Link Rapid Transit is just one element of a larger plan that the city has that comes out of the city's comprehensive plan and the city's transit plan to increase transit across the city with similar BRT or bus rapid transit service that would be fast, frequent, and reliable. The extension would continue. We hope to offer Link Rapid Transit service in the future along Broadway, north and south of town, and then out east, primarily along 4th Street. And then we'll look to go to the northwest as well. Link Rapid Transit will utilize what is known as transit preference lanes, or business access and transit lanes, BAT for short. These transit lanes are meant to have that buses be the preferred vehicles in them. And they will be marked as such, but it will still be permitted that if you're in your personal vehicle to make a right-hand turn out of those lanes to side businesses, side streets, and access other businesses and driveways along 2nd Street, a lot of those lanes. The benefits of having these transit preferred lanes is it does improve the reliability and the speed of the bus. It minimizes the conflict between transit vehicles, the bus vehicles, and other vehicles, and will hopefully making right-hand turns for everyone easier within the corridor. With that, I will pass it off to Nick Lemmer, like I said, who is Communications Director for Rochester Public Transit, to talk through the station.
Thanks, Jarrett. Good evening, everybody. I've had a great privilege to work with Jarrett and the team of designers and consultants and co-designers. And I've watched this concept of a bus rapid transit station go from just an idea to actually what you see here in this photo, which is a built out, constructed out of wood, but full scale BRT station. And what does that mean? I know Jarrett went through some of the characteristics of the BRT station, but first and foremost, what you'll notice when you take a tour of the station, and I hope if any of you haven't had an opportunity that you do get the opportunity, I'm going to walk through a lot of the aspects of it here. But one of the things you'll notice when you visit, if you visit, is that really just the sheer size. This is not a bus stop. This is a platform. This is a station platform. It's 80 feet in length, 10 feet in width. It accommodates a 60-foot bus, which is larger than any of the buses you'll see in Rochester on the streets right now. We use 40-foot buses, so a 60-foot bus would have an extra addition on the back, so it has 3 doors that open to the platform. And really what the model was built to do was not only to just demonstrate that real, I would say, visceral experience of the size and scale of the project, but also using informational signage that you'll find posted around the model itself to kind of explain the purpose and need for rapid transit in Rochester. And Jarrett did a great job just prior doing that. The model also really showcases and gives you an opportunity to tour some of the defining features of bus rapid transit. And I'll get into those in a little bit more detail. Also, as Jarrett mentioned, this station is branded. And in this photograph, you can see about a 15-foot tall station marker at the far end. You'll see it's like a vertical light blue stripe surrounded on either side by dark blue stripes. That's actually sort of a beacon, if you will, with the Link brand on the front and some other information. That'll be a prominent feature of each of the 11 stations along the route. In this case, it's 15 feet tall. In some cases, it will be as large as 24 feet tall. So the station model was an opportunity for us to both launch the brand and to sort of showcase how the sort of fun color palette and other things. I mean, you look at our staff member there who's speaking with a person who's touring the, got the shirts and everything. I think I have mine on my desk over here. I could share it with you. But and the other thing is it's also an opportunity for us to really engage with the public. We've hosted 3 events so far at the station itself. We've toured a number of groups who've expressed interest in seeing the model itself, and just dozens more of individuals who happen to come by anytime, really, and just take a look for themselves. Like I said, there's informational signage, and so it is very much a self-guided tour. But I'll skip ahead to the next slide here and show you some of the specifics that we're talking about. In transit, which is my area of expertise, we're always competing for riders with the private vehicle. And some of the ways we do that is we have to offer an exceptional service. We have to beat your own car in terms of comfort and convenience, reliability, safety. And we believe this station delivers on that. What we're looking at right here is what we're calling a climate protected enclosure that exists on each of the station model designs. So, the three folks you see, well, four, I guess, including the baby, the folks you see in this image, they're standing inside this enclosure. It's about 20 feet long and about 8 feet deep. And some of the features this enclosure has, it's well lit, like much of the platform is. I should mention, every time I talk about lighting, I forgot to say, there is a roof. Even though our model didn't have a roof, there is going to be a roof on the entire station platform to protect it from the elements. And so I'll get back. That roof will have plenty of lighting to make it warm, inviting, bright, safe place for people to be. The enclosure itself that you see has two entrances and exits. One sort of on the left that you see facing the back of the platform, one on the right looking down the platform towards the oncoming vehicles. It'll have features like overhead on-demand heaters, seating for comfort, route maps to help you know where you're going, and some digital real-time signage to help you understand when the next bus is getting there. So lots of features just packed into this one climate protected enclosure. And that really helps us provide a comfortable experience. You won't be waiting long for this bus, and I mean that. With the service that Jared described, 5-minute trips every 5 minutes during rush times, and then 10 to 15 minutes in off-peak. You won't have to wait long, but when you do, we'd like to make sure that it's in comfort. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So as part of the design process, Nathan and his team engaged with a group of local Rochester citizens who we called our co-design group. We invited applications and we selected a team that really represented a number of communities from Rochester, sort of a nice diverse mix of folks who could represent the kind of values and preferences of those individual communities and bring that forward into the design of the bus station platform itself. We went through a value exercise as well as a group, and number one on the list of values that was drafted by this group was accessibility for all to the bus platform. And so you can see some of the features that were built into the platform that really focus on making this a service that is accessible to all, regardless of ability. So textured tiles and other characteristics of the floor of the platform will easily guide passengers who may have a visual impairment and help them know how to find, say, for example, the ticket vending booth or the door, but also help them to be sure that they're being safe and not getting towards the edge of the platform. There's some characteristics on the bottom right where you see the level boarding that makes it very easy for folks who use a mobility device to get on and off the bus. So just a lot of features to make sure that the things that we value as America's City for Health are reflected in this, sort of game-changing amenity that will be coming our way in a couple of years. Let's go to the next slide. I talked about the level boarding in order to provide accessibility for persons with disabilities or who use a mobility device. The other thing that level boarding surface does is it allows for really fast boarding and alighting to the vehicle itself, along with 3 doors that all open at the same time. and off-board fare payment. This is a characteristic that Jared talked about early on. These factors all combine to make an experience that's very quick. We'll be able to get a lot of people on and off the bus without extending what we call a dwell time at the station. The shorter amount of time a bus is waiting for people to board at the station, and quickly can get on its way and stay on time. And really, that's what allows us to achieve those 5-minute headways that I talked about. The bus driver will have no responsibility for making sure people pay their fares. We'll leave that to another type of fare monitoring system. And we will just concentrate on making sure that we can move people through and to and through downtown Rochester as quickly as possible. And one of those ways you see illustrated here. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the co-designers earlier. This station model is more than just an example of what might come in the future. It's also a working prototype, right? So Nathan, I like to mention you at this point because this is really an opportunity, unlike a lot of other projects that architects in this area have had a chance to work on, because we've gone ahead and we've physically built out some of the features that our co-design team and our architects and others were sort of wrestling with. One of them, you see illustrated here on this slide, is the booth design. So we have two options, and I'll kind of walk through it. It's pretty clear from the graphics here, but the booth themselves are sort of mini climate shelters, like the larger shelter we showed you on the first slide, but these are almost like personal shelters. So glass enclosures on 3 sides in all cases, I should say 4 sides, because they've got a roof as well to help keeping the heat on those colder days. But the difference between option 1 and option 2 really is how they're oriented. Option 1, you're facing forward towards the platform, towards the bus when it arrives. You can see in each case, the 2 booths featured. One is shown with a seat in the down position, another is shown with a seat in the up position. I guess I would say that one of the other interesting things that came to light during the discussion of the model was really what are the maintenance costs and other issues that might come along with this foldable seat. And really, is that the best way to go? Or should we just, as a matter of course, offer 1 seat, 1 without a seat, for example? But so option 1 is the forward-facing booths. Option 2, we've oriented the booths so that they're facing each other. And what this does, it gives you some additional protection from the wind, because this really almost functions like a 4-sided shelter with a big door in the front, if you will. But this, again, this booth design is sort of like a personal shelter. We show one with a seat and one without a seat. I think as people toured the model itself, one of the things we discovered is that sitting across from each other might be perfect for families. So if it's a dad with a stroller or a mom with a stroller, you have the ability to sit right across from your child, and that has some definite positive aspects to it, or just another way of kind of orienting the passenger for some additional privacy, some additional protection from the elements. In the case of the woman who's seated, she's looking down the platform at the oncoming bus, which could have an advantage as well. I think what we have shown at the platform is both of these. And maybe, I don't know, Nathan, you can chime in later, but maybe they might both make it into the final station design, because I know that there were really some things to like about both of these designs. So, but this is just really an illustration of how this model is more than just a 3D rendering of a layout. I mean, we're really talking about a prototype that can be tested, that you can walk around and you can feel, does this feel like the right scale, size for some of these features that we've come up with during the design process. Okay, let's go ahead to the next slide. Finally, always the case in transit is that we put safety first, and that goes beyond just on board as you're driving through traffic. Safety at the bus stop or at the station platform, in this case, is a high priority. So you'll see some really great features, some security cameras. Again, we can talk about the lighting in the overhang there. Lots of bright LED lighting that will make this a really inviting and safe feeling experience. Emergency call box, should you need that. And a lot of glass to maintain that visibility. There's really no dark corners at all in this station design. It really is a high visibility, high lit place to wait for that bus. Some of the other features are also called up here because it's not just safety, it's also comfort. So important to delivering that superior experience. So again, on-demand heat that we've talked about, real-time arrival information. You'll see the fare vending machine there pictured on board, or on the platform rather. So that off-board fare payment will be right there and convenient, as well as public Wi-Fi. In addition to the climate-controlled features I described earlier, the station will also have a heated floor, which should quickly melt any snow that does accumulate sort of on the edges from blowing and drifting, which is bound to happen, but that will be quickly cleared by a system of in-floor heating that we've established. So this kind of just gives you another view of the entire station and all of those amenities that, quite frankly, these are all going to be brand new. This type of service is just really the next level. It's a sort of a game changer for Rochester. It will be able to deliver not only the service specifications that we hope for, frequency and capacity, but also those things that make us competitive with the private automobile, comfort and safety. Let's see, do I have one more slide, or are we on to Q&A? Let's see. Q&A, there we go. Hopefully you guys have gotten a sense for the platform itself. I would be down there giving you a virtual tour. We tried it. We just couldn't get the audio to be good enough. So we decided to keep it here in a more controlled setting and instead show some photos from the model. Again, Jared or anyone on the project team is happy to walk folks through it if you represent an organization who you think might be interested in seeing it. Or otherwise, we encourage you to go down there anytime you'd like to stop down by yourself. Jared, are we going to be open through the 15th of October? Is that correct?
Let's just say the 8th for right now.
The 8th, okay. Yeah, we've extended a week. We had planned on beginning decommissioning the station model at the end of this week, but we've extended it just because we've had a lot of interest from groups, quite frankly, who are touring the station. So let's hear it. What do you have for questions? You can raise your hand or type it in the Q&A, and we're glad to call on you and ask away.
Remember, you can type your questions in the Q&A box, or you can always raise your hand and to just talk to us directly. We'll give it another second here to see.
I'm trying to think of what some of the most common questions we were asked on the platform are. Can you remember, Jared? One of the things I didn't describe was the, sort of the slope that might lead to the platform itself. It is called a platform because it's a little higher than a normal curb. A normal curb is about 6 inches high. These platforms are 14 or 15 inches high. What that allows is for the bus as it approaches to not have to kneel, which is what our buses do today. So our buses pull up to the curb, they kneel down to 6 inches, and then people can board. These buses will just pull up and be completely level with the platform without that need to kneel. But how do we achieve that 14-inch curb, if you will? In some cases, the platforms are built up and there is a gentle slope that leads to them. But in most cases, we're able to adjust the design of the roadway in combination with the design of the platform to allow folks to easily walk into the platform without having to climb onto a platform. But Jared, it looks like we have a question. If you want to take that, or
Yeah, Melissa, if you can go ahead and unmute. And so Brooks, you have the opportunity. Yep, hi, you can hear you. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Two questions. First of all, is this intended to replace the Mayo downtown to St. Mary's staff shuttle and patient shuttle? And the second question is, what's the provision to deal with the problem of homeless? And you've created a nice space that I can see would attract homeless people in need of shelter.
Yeah, two very good questions. The first one is pretty easy to answer, and yes, the intent of Link Rapid Transit is to replace the current Mayo shuttle within the Second Street corridor and around immediately down around downtown. And so we are currently, the city is currently in negotiations with Mayo about some financial support and some of those hours in operation that I talked about earlier. And so we, as part of those negotiations, we have made it clear that the Mayo at least the shuttle, the Mayo shuttle in the corridor would be replaced by this service. For the second question on people experiencing homelessness, yeah, that is, we realize that we've created a nice large space that would be somewhat controlled with some from the weather and temperatures. The first thing I would say is it's not completely controlled. So the shelter, the 10 by 20 or the 8 by 20 space that Nick discussed and displayed does not have any doors on it. So it's not a completely controlled environment. And then additionally, the heat that would be provided would be the newest technology that we can find when it comes to the current radiant heat similar to the current radiant heat that we have at our transit shelters that are on demand. If you're familiar with those, you have to usually press the button. They last for a few minutes and then they turn off and you have to press the button again. It'd be something similar to that. So it won't be a complete place to completely a safe place to hang out for the entire night. We are also going to talk about doing some additional elements, making sure that the seating in there does not allow for long-term staying in there. We are concerned about that. City is continuously talking about how do we address those who are experiencing homelessness and have been in conversations, as you're probably very aware of the conversations that we've been having for the last year and a half with COVID and the shelter that was put on up. So it is a serious topic, and we'll continue to look at that and review it and talk through kind of what are the small things to make it not a place that someone would want to sleep for 8 hours. It kind of would be the suggestion. Nathan, to tee you up and get you prepared for you speaking next. Nathan Johnson from Formula Architects. What are some of the things you've designed stations across the country? What are some of the things that you've seen for homelessness besides what I just talked about? You're on mute.
I have to unmute myself, but I think obviously designing a bench so that it's not easy to sleep on. So putting some armrests to kind of break that bench up. Not providing a completely climate controlled environment where as you kind of mentioned, Jared, someone has to kind of actively get up to kind of turn on the heat. That changes kind of the character of that environment as well. I think I did see one additional question from Eileen as well, has her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a kind of response about getting rid of the Mayo shuttle, because, okay, I know that it usually stops at, I don't know if it's the House of Compassion, and a few of the local motels, on its way to St. Mary's. Plus the other nice thing about the shuttle is that you're going from relatively enclosed space at the Mary Bry entrance to the relatively enclosed space of the Gonda. You don't have to worry about, well, maybe a little bit of ice at Mary Bly, but since it's more or less enclosed, it's not as much of a concern. But if I was a clinic patient and I needed to, go to the St. Mary's for something, walking from Mayo, I mean, like in the winter, obviously, walking from, Mayo, Gonda area, down to, was it 3 or 4 blocks down to the Civic Center bus location, in the winter, would be a concern, because then that's, sometimes that gets kind of interesting, even crossing the street sometimes, depending on how much snow, et cetera, we got, because then it's like, well, you only have to walk 2 or 3 feet out into the middle of the street to walk around the snow pile, unless you want to try to be a billy goat and climb over it, or just dealing with ice, et cetera, on the sidewalk, getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
That would be a definite, drawback for any clinic person, because I think they'd be a little bit disappointed to find out, oh, great, I can come downtown from, St. Mary's, but then I've got to, hopefully, get into the Skyway soon, and then cross my fingers and hope that the, sidewalk isn't too horrible just to get, even from the Skyway, down to the pickup spot. That would be the only other thing that I'd be concerned about.
Yep, and it's a perfect question to tee up what Nathan's going to talk about next. We've started some work on trying to provide a more seamless transition between the Mayo shuttle and this, and Nathan will talk about that in a second. Otherwise, I would say, just to remind you, we do have a station proposed at 2nd and 2nd. So it would be right outside the Hilton building and right outside the Mayo building, so that someone would not have to walk from the, kind of those buildings, the Gonda building, to Civic Center. So there will be a closer station. But with that, I'll turn it over to Nathan to talk a little bit more about some of that integration and that quick access to subways.
So yeah, I think we have the majority of the sites identified here, but not all the station kind of locations. So what I'm going to do is take some time to just kind of walk you through kind of the integration, urban design at each location, at each of the locations kind of we're demonstrating here. So the first one we have is on the western portion of the line at 19th Avenue. This is actually it's one of the more unique stations. So what we've done in the design is the model that you see out there across from the library or in the Civic Center area is what we're referring to as kind of a prototypical station, and we're applying that kind of character or that design at each location, where it has an end shelter, it has a platform with a detectable warning that the bus can pull up on, and then it has these intermittent booths that allow people to wait in different types of environments. 19th is unique from all the other stations in regards to we're accommodating a bicycle facility that runs behind the station, which you can see kind of in the green stripe there. And that separates the pedestrian kind of walking or sidewalk from the actual station area. So that is unique there. What does happen here at 19th is with that separation, we only provide 2 access points into the platform. Typically at all other stations, we're providing 3 access points into the station area, 2 to the platform, and then I guess 2 to the shelter. This one we provide 2 to the shelter and then 1 at the end of the platform that you have access to on 19th. One other thing I should mention, on 19th, we do try at the majority of the stations to do what are called far side platforms. And what that does is it allows the bus to pull through the light before it stops at the station. And that speeds up the process of kind of alighting and boarding of the bus to make sure that the 5-minute headways that were identified earlier are able to be maintained. Next slide, please. So the next station, and I think this is going to address some of your comments, Eileen, is the St. Mary's Transit Center. And what happens at St. Mary's is with the updated designs is we have much more robust enclosures and opportunities for people to get into the hospital right away. So what you'll see here is there is a transit center that we're referring to on the north with a vertical access point that allows you to go under the street into a subway and into St. Mary's Hospital. And then the station on the south, which is the eastbound platform, also has a vertical enclosure. So you can actually get off the bus rapid transit line, or the link, as it is referred to now, and go right into that enclosure and be into St. Mary's as well. So you can get into these are 2 of 3 platforms that allow you to get into a climate controlled environment very quickly once you get off the bus. The other thing to mention about St. Mary's is that St. Mary's is being reconstructed from 2nd Street is being reconstructed from 18th to 11th. So it gives us a lot of opportunity to make improvements to support the station. The last thing that you can see on this site plan is we are, in addition to the rapid transit line, so the link, there are some accommodations for the local bus stop that you see kind of indicated on both ends of the station area. Next slide, please. So the other station where we are providing a vertical access point is at 2nd Avenue, specifically at the Hilton building side, which is the eastbound platform here. You'll see a much smaller vertical access enclosure than we're showing at St. Mary's. We had less room to work with, but we also recognize the need for people to want to get down and into the subway level at this location as well. So we provided that accommodation here. One thing that we do at 2nd Avenue, this is one of the few, if the only station area that does not have far side platforms on both sides. Basically the platforms line up kind of across 2nd Street from each other, but the south platform or the south station does have direct access into the Skyway. The other thing we recognize at Mayo or at the 2nd Avenue station is that this is probably the highest ridership station along with St. Mary's along the line. So this platform is a little bit wider. So what you'll see at the model that Nick was describing earlier, that's a 10-foot platform. We actually increased the size of the platform to 13 feet at 2nd Avenue here because of the high ridership that we anticipated. Next slide, please. And then you see here the last station area that we're going to show is kind of the Civic Center station platform. And this is the prototypical station with the 8 by 20 foot shelter that you can see on the right. This is where the bus starts to enter kind of the loop where it kind of turns right and kind of returns back and then starts going west again. One thing I think Jarrett did mention is there are some more site improvements here to create those strong connections down to your Riverwalk adjacent to this station. So some urban design features are being accommodated along with some reworking of the roadway to make it a more safe environment in this area. I believe that's the last slide, and I did see at least one question that's in the Q&A right there.
Yep, Eileen asked the question about the station at 6. Yes, the answer is yes. There is still a station planned and stop planned at 6th Avenue. We just did not include that as part of today's presentation, largely because it matches very closely. The platform itself matches very closely to what you will see in the model and at Civic Center. So there's not a lot of adjustments and changes for that platform. So the answer is yes. We still have 7 stops, and one of them is at 6th Avenue. Gonna give it some more time to see if anyone else has any questions. Type them on in and raise your hand again. Like I said, it's a pretty small group now, and feel free to pretty much you're just talking to Nathan, Nick, and myself, and then Alicia as well. So yeah, up first was Brooks. So let's start with Brooks first. Yep, Brooks, you should unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. Back to the 6th Avenue. Is there a eastbound and a westbound station on 6th or just one direction?
It would be 2 directions at 6. The only station that does the only stations that have one platform would be the West Transit Village, Government Center, and Civic Center. And the Government Center and Civic Center are because they're one directional loop around that block. But all other stations, including 6, St. Mary's and downtown, have traffic going both ways. So
you talked about 7 stops, but the 7 stops, there are more than 7 stations.
That is correct. You are correct in that. There is 7 stops, but 11 stations, 11 platforms. So If you end up counting the doubles and the singles, it ends up being 11 platforms. You're correct in that. Eileen, it looks like let's give Eileen a chance to ask a question here. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just trying to like mentally go through my head, the stop. So there's that West Village one, okay? And then there would be two actually. Okay. I want to write this down as I'm talking, so I get mixed up. Okay, so there's that West Transit, and that would have two pickup points, right?
One at West Transit. One at West Transit.
Will it be on both sides of the streets? I thought.
In West Transit, it would just the one. It will
Oh,
go into the
19th
site
Avenue.
and come back out.
Oh, okay. The 19th Avenue had two.
Yep.
Okay, and then St. Mary's has two. 6th Avenue would have two.
Yep. Correct.
And then 2nd Avenue would have two.
Two.
And then for lack of a better word, I'll call it the library one.
Yeah.
And that would have one. So
Yeah.
4, 8. Okay. Yeah, because for some reason I lost the 2nd Avenue stop, in the discussions. I was just thinking 19th, St. Mary's, 6th, and then downtown. But okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little difficult with the one way around the library and the government center. So it takes it took me a little bit of time to go, wait a second, it's not 14, it's a 10 or 11, and it's 11.
Right. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yep, I always try to think of the convenience store 7-Eleven. That's how I remember it. All right. I'll start to close up and wrap up, and thank you all for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. As always, you can get a hold of us through kind of our channels. The first one being the website, rochestermm.gov/rapid transit, or you can email us at rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov, or there's the number 507-328-2025. And Alicia's trying to pull it up, and I was able to remember and recite those from memory. Looks like Eileen, you raised your hand again. So can you on her? Get her to should be able to go.
Yeah, you answered the part about St. Mary's being protected from weather, but not about the library, quote unquote. Now, oh yeah, you did answer that, because then they could get off at 2nd Avenue, Hilton, and then go directly in the clinic. Okay, yeah, then we're good.
No, you're kindly welcome. Yeah, it's sometimes, and that's one of the things that we've learned from building the model is folks have some difficulty with spatial awareness and understanding, and so that's why we really want. That's why almost everyone that comes to the model for the first time says this is a large space, and it is a large space. People don't realize how big 80 feet really is. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of us building the model is it helps with people to have a difficulty, and even myself, have a difficulty with some spatial awareness on what actually 80 feet is and where it would sit. I would make a comment about that model that it is built there at the library, across from the library. It is almost in the exact location that station would be on in. We would have to move it back off the street 2 or 3 feet, but because we did not at this time want to take out the street trees and the parking meters, the station itself sticks out into the street about 2 or 3 feet further than the actual real station. Otherwise, it is pretty close to the exact location that the station would be proposed at that location. Otherwise, once again, I'll thank everyone and say this is the last opportunity to see if there's any more questions. Otherwise, I thank you all, and I guess I will say we're starting to have the conversation that we probably will not. Don't take my word for this yet, but we probably will not have a webinar in October. That's that's the next month, October, due to a lack of new material to present. So it might be some time between today and our next webinar. But we hope to see you soon and hope to get back and keep up this line of communication with everyone in the community. I think everyone really appreciates this opportunity to talk with us and see some of the designs and go through them. With that, I'll say once again, thank you very much and have a good night.